Mr. Jameel Hamdani, office bearers of the Pakistan-France Business Alliance, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful to the Alliance for providing me this opportunity to enter into our dialogue on a very important issue. Jameel has already covered the entire waterfront, so I have a very easy task, and which is to sketch out a possible scenarios for what we should be doing or what the new government should be doing in the next few months and few years. And let's not spend too much time on what happened in the immediate past, because the record is all before you, that from the third highest growing country in Asia after China and India, growing by 7.5% between 2002 and 2007, our average growth rate has gone down to 3.5%. And if you take a population growth rate of 2% per annum, we have a stagnating economy. At this growth rate, it will take you 70 years in order to double your per capita income, which right now is about $1,500 to $3,000. And look at the lack of employment opportunities, the poverty which will persist, particularly the lack of opportunities for the budging youth to be absorbed in the economy. So it's a very nightmarish scenario if we do not accelerate our growth. And contrast this, that if you had continued with the 7.5%, let's imagine even 7%, your per capita income growth would have been 5%. And by 2021, your per capita incomes would have doubled. 1 million jobs would have been created every year, particularly absorbing the youth of this country. And the poverty level would have gone down to almost 15 to 16% from 24-25%. So I wanted to demonstrate the two scenarios, and there's a choice before the policymakers, whether they create an enabling environment, because government is not creating economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen sitting here are responsible for carrying out economic activities and generating growth. So let's be very clear that the role of the government is to provide an enabling environment in which businesses can carry out their normal functions and their expansion activities and have responsive opportunities to the changing demands and the preferences of a dynamic economy. If you look at the urbanization, the educated female labor force, which is now emerging, what was required 10 years ago for the domestic economy is no longer going to be the case 5 years from now. So you have to keep on adjusting and adapting to both the technological changes which are taking place outside your domain, but also be responsive to the emerging needs of the population. That means new products, new processes, new brands, which is what the businesses ought to do. If they're chasing the government offices for getting things done. They are wasting their very valuable resources in unproductive activities. Or if there is an element of uncertainty as to what will happen tomorrow, no investment takes place. That's why the investment levels have come down from 23% to 12%, almost half. And there's a formula. If you have 23%, 24% investment, that means that you will be able to generate 7% economic growth. If you have only 12%, you will grow by 3 and 3.5%. So I wanted to show you the power of investment. And investment is not done by the government. Investment is done by you. What do you require? You require a stable macroeconomic environment where you know you will get the electricity, the gas, and all other public services on time at the required speed and the quantity which you need without any hassle. Because the world is a globalized village. If you're not able to deliver your goods to your buyers on time to meet the Christmas deadline, you're dead. Nobody will come and ask you to justify why there was delay. They have many other opportunities. They will go to Cambodia, they will go to Vietnam, they will go to Bangladesh, although Bangladesh is not very popular these days, but they have the opportunities to diversify, so they just abandon you. Second, you must have a certainty about the tax regime, whether the taxes which you are able to pay are known during the period of your investment, because your rate of return is very much dependent on what element of your profits are captured as the taxes. But if every day there is an adjustment in the tax rate or the tax assessment systems, or there is arbitrary extortion on the part of the tax collectors, then you will not be able to make that decision of investment. Third, that you must have a stable exchange rate. People accuse me that I artificially had the exchange rate stable at 60 rupees to $1. That's bunkum. You cannot artificially maintain an exchange rate and build up your reserves. In order to maintain an artificial exchange rate, you have to dip into your reserves. That is the only thing. You can't have both your cake and eat it too. So if the reserves were going down, then you could allege that the exchange rate was being artificially controlled. But from $400 million, the reserves went up to $16 billion, and the exchange rate remained stable. It's common sense. A lot of money was coming into the country. $5 billion of foreign direct investment was flowing in. So you have supply in excess of the demand, and when you have excess of supply, that you build up your exchange reserves and you stabilize the exchange rate. It's basic arithmetic, nothing rocket science about it. Why is it that the exchange rate is depreciating, as Jamil said, and the reserves are depleting? Because the supply of the foreign exchange and the US dollars is much lower than the demand. This is a demand and supply factor. Like any other commodities, you're all businessmen, the exchange market is also like a commodity. So your foreign direct investment today is below $1 billion. And your imports of oil are $17.5 billion, increasing every year. And your exports are at $25 billion, your imports are $42 billion. So you have a gap of $17 billion exactly on your trade balance. You get $12 billion from remittances, but still you have $5 billion gap. How do you fill in the gap? You fill in the gap by foreign direct investment, but that's not coming in. And that's the reason why you have both the depreciating exchange rate and the depletion in the reserves. Why would Tariq Jawad bring in new investment in this country when his rupee returns are 15%, but because of the depreciation, his dollar returns are only 5%. Now his head office would say, you're crazy. At 5% rate of return, we're not going to give you any resources. But when you have a stable exchange rate, you get a 15% return in rupees, that translates automatically in a 15% dollar return. And your head offices are extremely pleased to pour in more money because you're getting good returns. That is what economics of new investment is all about. And people do not understand that this is the equation which drives the foreign direct investment. So you have an unstable exchange rate, you have an uncertain macroeconomic environment, you have 5 finance ministers and 4 governors of the state bank being changed during this period. You do not know who you're going to do business. The person who has made commitment to you will be there tomorrow to meet that commitment or not. Would you bring in your money or not? This is a management issue. It's not anything wrong with the fundamentals of the economy in Pakistan. If you take a ship and the ship is in choppy waters, in the turbulent waters, you need very heavy hands on the steering wheel in order to take it to the shore. You don't just let it drift. And your economic problems have arisen not because there is anything fundamentally wrong, but because there is nobody on the steering wheel in order to take the economy on shore. And it leaves it in the turbulent water. So, what is the way out? Those of you who have read my 3 articles, which I have contributed to Toot in Dawn, the Big Bang Approach, and the IMF Dilemma, and one Soiling the Better Pit in News, I argue very humbly that we should have an economic policy direction statement by this government as to what this government is going to do in the short run, in the medium term, and in the long term. So this uncertainty about the macroeconomic environment is translated into a certainty about the direction in which you will be moving. You should know whether from Lahore you're going towards Islamabad or from Lahore you're going to Multan. If you do not know this direction, you will never be able to move forward. So it should not be an ordinary budget. It should be an economic policy statement which provides what you're going to do about the circular debt and how you are going to resolve these shortages of electricity, which are very much linked with the circular debt issue, which is again a mismanagement rather than anything else. And you will understand if I give you a very simple illustration of what the circular debt problem is. The stock of debt, whether it is 400 billion or 600 billion, is not the issue, because after netting off all the transactions between the various parties, you will have a residual amount which may be only one half of the stock. You can refinance it. You can do a PIB, you can do a sukuk, and there will be an appetite for that particular refinancing. So we're not worried about the stock refinancing.